shoot some Santana tones. It's our player study for Carlos Santana, so let's get the tone. So starting with the guitar, we have been fortunate enough to borrow this lovely PRS from Jay, one of our tutors. I mean, just look at it. It's lovely. You know, standard sort of maple cap, mahogany body, set neck, lovely kind of bluesy, you know, sort of early PAF style humbuckers. This particular one is a 10 top, which means they've got a lovely piece of wood, making it look, well, you can see what it looks like. It's beautiful. So this is the guitar that Santana used from sort of late 80s onwards. He was one of the first guys to really sort of pick up PRS and run with it. It changed over from his early Yamaha SG2000, I think. But yeah, we've, as I say, been lucky enough to borrow this for the tone, so this should at least put us in the right ballpark. If you're not lucky enough to have a sort of several grand worth of PRS, generally any guitar with a sort of relatively low output humbucker is going to get you roughly in the right ballpark. You know, as with all of these things, the majority of the kind of sound and the tone comes from the way you play it. But if you've got, you know, sort of a humbucker equipped guitar, that's a good start. Okay, just quickly before we move on, this Warmouth, which is Dan's main teaching guitar, you'll have seen it on a lot of his videos. He likes it because it's just nice to play, nice thick tone, easy to sort of see what's going on the fretboard. These are actually bare knuckle Abraxas pickups, so have been specifically made to get that kind of early Carlos tone. We didn't go for this ultimately because really with the sort of the sound we were getting out of the amp, they didn't sound all that different. And let's face it, the PRS just you know, looks great, looks right. But yeah, as I say, we probably could have got pretty close with either guitar, and I'm sure you'll find the same with any humbucker equipped guitar. So as I say, let's get on to the amps. Okay, so we find ourselves in our lovely new amp corner. I mean, look at these babies. So we've got our Fender for our lovely sort of clean bluesy tones. The Morgan is kind of clean as well. It can do a bit of drive. Lovely plexi. I mean, you know what that's going to sound like. That's sort of British kind of mid gain tones. And then from John Brandwood, we have borrowed this beautiful Mesa Boogie King Snake. Now, this is a sort of production model of Carlos's sort of you know, early Mesa Boogie amp that he sort of still uses on stage today. It's single channel 100 watt amp, which is switchable down to 60 like Carlos's amp, and also down to 10 in case you don't have a spare sort of auditorium stage to be able to use it on. As I say, single channel. There's two inputs here which allow you to sort of link and get a bit more gain. We went for input 2. I'll talk you through the settings. So we went for input 2, which is just using this volume 2 here. This is essentially gain. It's your preamp volume. We found that on around 7 gave us sort of what we wanted. The master, we were able to have it up sort of 6.5, 7. I mean, really, because we had it on 10 watt mode, anything above kind of 5 was starting to really saturate, and we were just getting more gain. I'll briefly talk about sort of preamp and power amp distortion, so, or rather sort of clipping, I guess you'd really call it. So volume or gain, this is your preamp gain. Generally on an amp it's going to be labelled as gain. This is how hard you're driving the preamp tubes. Preamp tubes, basically every amp has got the same preamp tubes, pretty much. You're going to get 12 AX7s, they're called. They're the same in nearly every amp. So really where the character comes from the specific amp, is the power section. They're the big tubes. This one's got 6 L6s. You can get EL84s, which you'd get in something like this. EL34s you'd get in sort of more powerful kind of Marshall style amps, but go back to this one, 6 L6s. As a rule, you'll get 6 L6s in American style amps and EL34s, EL84s in British style amps. That's a big generalization, and there's plenty of crossover, but that's as a rule. I'm going to go back to the power stage. This allows you to get that kind of clipping from the power stage and get a really nice character to the gain. 10 watts will allow you to have plenty of gain from the power stage. It's still got to be pretty loud, otherwise you're going to just be getting preamp clipping. 60 watts, which is what Carlos uses live, is incredibly loud and is a nice kind of sweet spot. Lots of headroom, but also you can drive it if you can stand the volume. 100 watts is going to just be very, very clean. A bit louder as well. Obviously, there is a difference between watts and volume. It's more sort of relating to the headroom, really. So we stuck it on 10 watts because 60 is crazy, crazy loud. Anyway, back to the settings. The EQ we'll do first was pretty standard. We had 5 and 5 for the treble and the bass, so pretty much sort of kind of flat, as flat as you can really get with a Mesa Boogie. And then the mid boost we had sort of cranked up quite high. This gave us that really sort of saturated Carlos Santana lead tone, because he gets it mostly from the amps. He's not using a lot of pedals, if any, really. And then, as I say, I did touch on it. Finally, the master. We had it on 6.5, gave us a nice bit of power amp saturation, a nice bit of sort of creamy lead tone. So yeah, that's the amp. Let's go on to the pedals. Okay, so first off, let's have a look at the guitar. Settings wise, we found that just below full volume was pretty good. It takes off the super highs generally. It gives you a nice kind of, I guess, sort of restrained tone. Gives you somewhere to go if you want to sort of push it up to 11, if you see what I mean. Tone wise, we backed off quite a lot on it. I'm just going to turn the volume off for now. So tone wise, we were around kind of, I guess you'd call that sort of 4. That's what worked for us with this guitar. You're best off just sort of using your ears, really, and neck pickup. Basically, what we were really going for was kind of, I guess, a sort of an approximation of Carlos's tone over the years, because it has changed a little bit. This is a kind of, sort of ballpark tone. It will get you in the right sort of, right kind of area for covering sort of a various different areas of his career. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to play, no pedals are on, this is just the amp, it's cranked up pretty loud, so you're probably not going to be able to have it this loud at home. So what we'll do in a minute is we'll talk about how you can kind of get quite close with pedals. Okay, so this is roughly what the sort of tone we were using. Okay, so the amp's given us quite a lot there. That's mostly coming, as I talked about, from the power amp tubes. They're really starting to work hard, which, as I say, is threatening the neighbours, but what can you do? So if that's not always a possibility with you, which I appreciate, it's almost certainly not, let's have a look at how you can get kind of roughly close with pedals. Okay, so you join us here at our lovely pedal board. Again, as I said before with Carlos, he uses very, very, very few effects. I mean, if any. Often, no drive pedals really. You're just looking at the sound of the amp. But as I said before, if you're not going to be able to get that sound out of your amp, which most amps aren't going to really be able to get that tone. As I say, we were lucky enough to have a specific Santana kind of style amp. If you haven't got that, pedals are your answer. Okay, pedals are your friend. You can do this at a much lower volume. The pedals are using transistors, which generally sound the same at whatever volume you're using. So this is the way to go. What we found, tube screamer to give us that mid boost. If you remember on the amp, we had that mid boost very, very high. Tube screamers give you a kind of, they're basically a mid boost essentially. It's sort of a pushes your amp sort of tone. The Ecstasy here, also called the Euphoria, is a sort of Dumble style, very kind of transparent overdrive. Santana also uses Dumbles Live as well, so we thought this was a fairly good place to sort of start. So we're effectively using this kind of as our amp, if you like. The gain's set pretty low, the bass is sort of relatively low as well. We've backed off on the tone just to give us that kind of warm, middly kind of Santana tone, and the volume set pretty much on unity. This little switch in the middle, as you'll see, between smooth, open and crunch. Smooth is, I mean, well, if smooth isn't going to get you a Santana tone, if you know what I mean, I don't know what else is. So we went for that, which is the sort of the amp tone that you're going to be wanting. And then we used the tube screamer to sort of push the tone into the ecstasy, which kind of gives it that kind of sort of tube amp being driven kind of sound. I'll give you a little demonstration. So this is just the ecstasy. So you've got kind of... Okay, so nice, creamy. I love that tone. It's really, really nice. If you want a little bit more kind of grit to it, the tube screamer is good as well. So we kick that on now. Okay, so pretty nice. Maybe not quite as much gain as we've got coming out of the amp, but it's controllable. It's a lovely tone. To be honest, it's kind of when you actually sat in the room with it, I almost prefer the pedals really. It's less harsh on your ears. So if that's what you've got, you know, roughly that kind of thing, you'll be in the right ballpark. Okay guys, so hopefully it gives you everything you need to get a rough sort of Santana tone. If you've got the amp, fantastic, you're kind of halfway there already. You just need a humbucker equipped guitar, nothing too hot, you don't want any EMGs, that kind of thing. That will get you roughly right. If not, pedals are the way to go. Think kind of creamy tone. You don't want too many highs. It's a very middly tone, not too much lows, not too many lows either. Right guitar, do a lot with the volume knob and the tone, and sort of use your ears for what works for you. But hopefully that gives you a rough idea.